Good evening to everybody. This is my first lecture on environment and ecology. In today's lecture, we will discuss about the environment. So, as far as the environment and ecology is concerned, this is a very important part of your general studies paper preparation. As far as the preliminary examination is concerned and the paper 3 of the general studies is concerned, so a good number of questions are asked from the section of environment in your UPSC examination. So let me start our today's lecture. The lecture today is about the environment. So we are going to discuss about the environment. Okay. So when we start our studies about the environment, then three important concepts usually come to our mind. The important concepts which come to our mind include: one is the environment, and the second is the ecosystem, and the third is the, we can say, ecology. So these are the three important concepts which come to our mind. Right? So first of all, we will try to know that what the environment is. As far as the environment is concerned, we can say that environment is the surrounding of an organism. Surrounding of an organism, right? So किसी भी organism की जो भी surrounding होती है, वो उस organism का environment होता है, right? So surrounding of an organism. So as far as the surrounding is concerned, surrounding may be of the biotic factors and surrounding may be of the abiotic factors. Right? So it may be of biotic factors, means living beings, right? Surrounding may be of living beings, or it may be of abiotic factors, non-living beings, right? So as far as the biotic factors are concerned, right? So biotic factors in our surrounding include, that is the plants, animals, fungi, microorganisms, other microorganisms we can say, right? So these are the biotic factors in our environment. As far as the abiotic factors in our environment are concerned, these factors may include sunshine and temperature, that is air, water, soil, rocks, etc. Right? So many abiotic factors are there in our surrounding. Right? So that means the environment consists of the living as well as non-living factors, which is the biotic as well as the abiotic factors. Right? So now the next thing is that let us say this is a particular geographic area, right? So in a geographic area, there are many living organisms, right? In a particular geographic area, there are many living organisms. And apart from that, there may be a number of, we can say, non-living, you can say physical environment also be existing, right? Non-living elements may be there, right? Living as well as non-living element, right? So in this particular geographical area, the various living organisms interact with each other, and they interact with the non-living physical environment as well, right? With the non-living environment as well. So the interaction between the various organisms, right, and the organisms with the non-living environmental factors. So that interaction, which is necessary to make a living, that is known as the ecosystem, right? So what is there? We can say, so ecosystem. So to define an ecosystem, we should consider two, three important things. One is a particular geographical area, right? A particular geographic area. One is that geographic area. One is that, right? And the second thing is that there are the living beings, right, who interact with each other, and and there are the non-living beings also. There are non-living beings also with whom the with which the living beings interact, with which the living beings interact. Okay, and this is necessary to make a living. This is necessary to make a living, right? So this particular geographical area in which the various living organisms interact with each other as well as interact with the other physical environment to make a living, that particular geographic area is known as the ecosystem, right? So that particular geographic area is known as the ecosystem. Okay, so is ecosystem, right? And the next is the study of the relationship between the various organisms living in an ecosystem, and study of the interaction between the living organisms and the non-living physical environment in a geographic area. That study is known as the ecology, right? So ecology, what is ecology? We can say ecology is the study of interactions between, right? Study of a network of interactions, study of a network of interactions within an ecosystem, within an ecosystem, right? So this interaction is between the various living organisms and living organisms in the non-living environment, which is necessary to make a living, and this is known as the ecology, right? So there are three terms now. Environment is the entire surrounding, and ecosystem is the interaction within a particular geographical area, right, between the various living and non-living factors, right, that's there. And the study of those interactions and the study of those, you can say that relationship, that is known as the ecology. So these are the three important terms, and this is the difference between the environment, ecosystem, and ecology. I hope this point will be clear to you, right? If anybody has any doubt, you can raise your hand. Okay, so now the next thing is that as far as the environment is concerned, right? So I'm telling you that environment consists of the living as well as the non-living factors. Consists of the living as well as non-living factors. living and non-living factors. Okay, so that means there can be the two categories of the environment. One category of environment is that which is represented by the living factors or the living organisms, living beings. So that is known as the biotic environment, right? And the other type of environment, that is the, we can say, abiotic environment, right, which comprises of the non-living factors that is there. Okay, so abiotic factors, right? So now we can say that so you can say, because the factors, because the factors, right, the factors constituting the environment, are variable. Those are not constant, they are variable, they keep on changing with time and space. So therefore environment is a dynamic phenomena, right? Environment is a dynamic phenomenon or a variable factor. Environment is a dynamic phenomenon or it is a variable factors, variable factor, we can say like that, right? So environment is a this type of the phenomena, right? So now the point is that let's suppose these are the various environmental factors, and this is an organism, right? And around this is the environment of this organism, right? So now it's very much clear to us that the organism, right, the organism has adapted itself, to live and grow in a particular environment, right? In a particular environment, and adaptation is a slow process. And adaptation is a slow process. It takes time. Right? It takes time. Okay. So now the next thing is that in this context, we can say that if the rate of change in environment, rate of change in environmental factors, environmental factors is very fast, and the organisms are not able to adapt with the changing environment, adapt with the changing environment at that faster pace, then it leads to, or it brings a crisis. Then it leads to a crisis for life, right? Then it leads to a crisis for life, right? So how we can say that it is a crisis for life? Because if life takes more time to adapt to the changing environment, if life takes more time to adapt to the changing environment, then the rate at which the environment is moving, then there may be numerous risks to the living organisms living organisms of that area, right? Living organisms of that area, right? So what may be the numerous risks, right? There may be, you can say, a risk to their survival, maintenance. There may be a risk to their growth, right? There may be risk risk to their productivity. Their productivity may be affected with that, right? May get affected with that, and there may be risk to their fertility. Their fertility or reproduction may also be affected due to the changing environment factors, right? So that is why every time when the environmental change happens at a very fast pace, then it brings a crisis for the life on the planet, right? And that is why we are so serious about the climatic change or about the environmental changes which are taking place on the planet today, because the rate of environment change is very fast as on today, right? So which is bringing new threats like loss of biodiversity, right? Extinction of many species, that is also there, right? And many more species are on the threat of extinction, right? So such type of things are there, right? So genetic changes in the species as well, so that is there, right? So and we can say, so when this thing happens, when we see that the environmental changes at very fast pace, then we can say we become worried. We become worried, and it is out of that worry that the Kyoto Protocol or the Paris Agreement, right, had come out in the past, right? So that means this is the whole story, because we are adapted to live in a particular set of environment, and similarly the other organisms are also adapted to live in a particular set of environment. The environment is changing, that is true, right? But if it is changing at its normal pace, at its natural pace, right, according to which the species can adapt themselves, right? So then there is nothing to worry. But when the rate of change in the environmental factors become faster and the species, you can say, lag behind, and they find themselves unable to adapt to the changed environment, so then in that case, it creates a crisis, it brings a crisis, and then the community or the scientific community of the world had to think, and it is out of that worry that the Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement is there, which we are seeing today, right? So the main thing is that, right? So this is the introduction about the environment, and what environment is, what ecosystem is, and what ecology is, right? So now we are moving further, right? So today in this lecture, we will focus on the physical environment which is surrounding us, right? We will focus on the physical environment which is, we can say, surrounding us, right? So as far as the physical environment is concerned, in our physical environment, we can say there are the two components of the physical environment. One is the non-living component of physical environment, and non-living component of physical environment, and second is the living component of the physical environment. Living component of the physical environment. So these are the two components of the physical environment. So as far as the non-living component of the physical environment is concerned, it includes soil, one point. It includes air and atmosphere. So this is a non-living component, and then it includes radiation, atmosphere, then it includes radiation, right? Then it includes, we can say, temperature, it includes precipitation. Precipitation means rainfall, right? It includes precipitation, etc., and some other factors as well, right? So, and what is the living component of the physical environment? That is, we can say, all living organisms, including the plants, right? All living organisms, including plants, we can say this, all living organisms, including plants, right? So this is there, right? So now we will discuss about various components of the non-living environment. So first we will start our discussion with the soil today, right? So first we will start our discussion with soil today. So now let us discuss it, soil. So first thing, what soil is, how soil is formed, etc., etc. We will discuss all these things in this today's class, right? So the important point is that what is soil, right? So we can say that soil is the uppermost, weathered layer, uppermost weathered layer of Earth's crust, weathered layer of Earth's crust. So that is called the soil, right? So in this uppermost weathered layer of Earth's crust, we cultivate crops, right? We cultivate crops. So it is, I think, clear to everybody that the uppermost layer, right, which is weathered layer of the crust of the earth, that that is called the soil, and it is the soil where we cultivate crops, right? So that's there. So now the next point is that what does soil compose of, right? So we can say that soil composes of, what is there in soil, right? So soil composes of one thing, what is there in soil, that is, we can say, the weathered mineral rock particles are there in the soil, mineral rock particles. One point is that, right? And the second thing, right, which is there in the soil, that is, we can say, water is there in the soil. And the third thing, we can say the air is there in the soil. The air is there in the soil, right? And the fourth thing, we can say, that is the organic matter which is there in the soil. Organic matter which is there in the soil. Okay. So the soil consists of the weathered mineral rock particles. One is that, right? Second is the water, third is the air, and fourth is, we can say, the organic, we can say, matter, right? So that is there. Okay. So, and you all know, I think, the study of soil is known as, what is the study of soil? Study of soil is, right? Study of soil is known as, we can say, the pedology, right? So pedology. So pedology is the study of soil. So please bear this in mind, right? Study of soil is called pedology, right? So apart from all these four things, right, soil has a number of living microorganisms also, right? So there are many bacteria, etc., which are living in the soil, right? So soil has a number of living microorganisms as well. Okay, so I hope up to this point this is clear to you. So first of all, soil. What is soil? It is the, we can say, the uppermost weathered layer of Earth's crust. So it includes the uh, rock part, rock particles which are weathered to form the soil, water, air, organic matter. It is there, right? And along with this, I have just told you that study of soil is known as the pedology. Pedology. Okay. So now the soil formation, right? So as far as the, we can say, soil formation is concerned, right? So weathering is the very first step, is the very first step in soil formation, in soil formation, right? Because actually what is there? In actual, there is the rock, let's suppose. This is a piece of rock, right? So this piece of rock, right, gets gets weathered or keeps on weathering due to a number of factors, right? And with the weathering of this, you can say, rock, right? So the particles become loose, right? They become fragmented, right? And mm, that is called the weathering, and this is the first step in the soil formation, we can say, right? So this is the main thing, right? So as far as the weathering phenomena is concerned, right? So weathering means the wear and tear of the rocks, or the you can say disintegration of the rocks, right, to form the soil. That is called the weathering, right? So now as far as the weathering is concerned, weathering can be physical weathering, weathering can be chemical weathering, and weathering can be biological weathering, right? So there can be the mechanical weathering, chemical weathering, or biological weathering, right? So I'm writing here the physical weathering. This is the one point, right? And the second point is the chemical weathering. Okay. One is the physical weathering, second is the chemical weathering, right? And the third point we can say that is there, which is there. Okay. So that is the biological weathering. Okay, that is the biological weathering. So as far as the physical weathering is concerned, that involves the disintegration of rocks due to the physical factors, right? Disintegration of rocks due to the physical factors. So that is there, right? Then chemical weathering, that is the disintegration of rocks due to the chemical reactions which take place, right? Disintegration of rocks due to the chemical, yes, due to the chemical, we can say, factors which take place. We will discuss in detail in some other part. And then the biological weathering is the weathering of rocks which is caused by the biological activities, right? Like we can say the that is the roots of the plants, right? Which cause disintegration of the rocks, that is there, right? Burrowing by the animals, right? जैसे rats वगैरह, right? वो burrow करते हैं, so that is there, right? They do holes there in the, right, inside, right? So many things, right? So we will discuss it in detail somewhere else. So it means there is three types of weathering. You should bear it in mind. One is the physical weathering, second is the chemical weathering, and third is the biological weathering, right? So that is there, right? So these are the three types of weathering. So biological weathering is by actions of animals and plants. Chemical weathering is by the chemical reactions which take place, right? And the rest of the phenomena which is related with the weathering, right? So that will fall into the physical weathering, we can say, right? So now the next thing is next comes the types of soil, right? So next is the, we can say, types of soil, types of soil. So as far as the types of soil is concerned, right? So we will take it in some other way here, right? So uh, one is the on the basis of its formation and deposition, right? So type of soil. One category of soil we can say that is on the basis of its on the basis of its formation and deposition, right? Formation and deposition, right? Because you must be knowing that in this soil formation process there are three important activities. One activity is the weathering means disintegration, we can say it, right? Disintegration, right? So once the disintegration takes place, then the second is the transportation, right? Transportation. The disintegrated racks are transported by the water action or by the wind action, etc., etc. Transportation is there. And the third is, that is the, we can say, accumulation is there, right? So third is the accumulation, right? So these are the various three, we can say, processes or three activities involved in this process, right? So we are talking about the types of soil here on the basis of its formation and deposition, right? So in this, according to this criteria, there can be two types of soil, right? According to this criteria, there can be two types of soil. One type of soil is, that is the, we can say, the residual soil. One is this, right? And the other type of soil is, we can say, that is the transported soil. The other type of soil is the transported soil. So these are the two types of soil we can say, right? So as far as the residual soil is concerned, the residual soil is formed at a place where the bedrock exists, right? So what is the residual soil? Residual soil is formed at a place where the bedrock exists, right? Is formed at a place where the bedrock exists. Okay, where the bedrock exists. Okay, bedrock, this is the bedrock, right? With its disintegration, the soil is formed. That is why this is called the bedrock, right? So where the bedrock exists, right? So now the thing is that we can say that this residual soil is known as the in situ soil, right? So this is known as the in situ soil, right? In situ soil, because this is the soil which is formed at a place where the bedrock is lying, right? So the soil which has been formed but not transported, that is the residual soil, we can say, right? So obviously this soil will be at the place where its parent rock exists or where its bedrock exists, right? So this is known as the in situ soil, right? So the next is the transported soil. As far as the transported soil is concerned, this is the soil. Transported soil is the soil which is carried away, right? Which is carried away from the place where it is formed, right? From the place where it is formed, right? So this is the transported soil, right? Let's suppose the soil was, you can say, formed at this place which is called A, right? And then after the disintegration of this rock, when the soil is formed, then the, you can say, air or water, right? So carries away this to some other place, right? And you can say accumulate this to that place. So let's suppose this is known as the B, right? So if this rock will if this soil will be lying here, then this would have been the in situ soil, which is the residual soil. But when it is transported to this place, right, at B place, this becomes the transported soil, which we can call the ex situ soil also, right? So which we can call the ex situ soil also, right? Ex situ soil. We can call it this also. So ex situ soil, right? So now the next thing is that the various types of transported soil, right? So far we have discussed that there are two categories of soils on the basis of the formation of the soil and its transportation. Those two categories of soil are known as the residual soil as well as the transported soil. And now we will discuss about the transported soil. Okay. So as far as the transported soil is concerned, right? So there are other categories of there are more categories of the transported soil, right? More categories of the transported soil, right? So now the categories of the transported soil are concerned, right? So 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm taking the four main categories of the transported soil. Okay, four main categories of the transported soil, right? So see, transportation means movement, right? Movement involves energy, right? Okay, movement involves energy, right? So energy may be provided by the wind, energy may be provided by the water, energy may be provided by the glacial actions or the glacial movements, right? Energy may be provided by the gravitation of the earth. Okay, so these are the, we can say, transporting agents, right? So it means these categories are further based on the transporting agents, right? So what are the various transporting agents which have role in the trans in the transportation of the soil, right? So it is on this basis that we categorize the transported soil into various categories, right? So first category or the first transporting agent, we can say, that is the gravity. One agent is gravity, right? And the other agent can be water, right? And the other agent can be the glacial movement, right? Glaciers, we can say, glacial movement. And the other agent can be the air, right? So these are the four agents, right, which causes the transportation of the soil, right? So this point is important, right? So please note it, right? So when the transportation takes place due to the gravity, right? So then the soil transported at some other place and accumulated at some other place due to the gravitational force or due to the gravity, right? So that is known as, we can say, right, colluvium soil. Okay, colluvium soil. So please bear this in mind, right? So the transported and accumulated soil due to the gravitational force that is known as the colluvium soil, right? So it means gravitational force, right? So transporting agent is gravitation here. And the next is, if it is by the water, then it is known as the, we can say, alluvium soil, right? Then it is called the alluvium soil, right? And the next, if it is transported and accumulated at some other place due to the glacial movement, so this is known as the, we can say, the known as the glacial soil. Okay, glacial soil. So this is the third category. And when it is moved and accumulated in some other place due to the air action, due to the wind action, so that is known as the, we can say, right, uh, Aeolian soil. Aeolian soil, right? So please bear this in mind. You can make a table also of this, right? So that is the transportation, means shifting of soil from one place to another, and the accumulation of soil at some other at the destination, that is right. So that may be due to the gravity, water, glacial movement, or the aeolian or the wind action. If it is due to the wind action, then it is known as the aeolian soil. If it is due to the glacial movement, it is noted the glacial soil. If it is due to the water action, it is known as the alluvium soil. And if it is due to the gravity, then it is known as the colluvium soil. Okay, it is known as, we can say, the colluvium soil. Okay, so I think up to this point everything is clear to you. If you have any doubt, you can please raise your hand or type your query also over there. Okay, so okay, so now the next point which we are going to discuss here now, right? So that is, we can say, the composition of soil, right? So the next important point is the composition of soil, right? So as far as this point is concerned, which is the composition of soil. Composition of soil means what soil is made of, right? So the composition of soil includes, right? So that is, one is the, we can say, in the composition of soil, one point is, we can say, that is the mineral particles. Mineral particles are there in the soil. We have discussed earlier also. And the second thing which is there, that is the organic matter in the soil, right? And the third point is, which is there, that is the, we can say, air and water, which is there in the soil, right? Air and water, right? So these are the important components of the soil, right? Okay. So now we are just discussing about the mineral particles of soil, right? So the concentration and the relative proportion of the mineral particles of soil, right? Mineral particles of soil. Okay. So we can say that mineral particles of the soil are categorized into three, right? Mineral particles of the soil are categorized into three, right? So one is the sand, second is the silt, and third is the clay. These are the three mineral particles of the soil, right? So, okay, clay, right? So as far as the sand is concerned, it is, yes, we can say the sand, silt, and clay. So this is differentiated only and only on the basis of right, only and only on the basis of size of the particles, right? Only on the basis of size of particles, right? So as far as the sand is concerned, right, so the size of particle of the sand is 0.05 mm, right? Mm to 0.05 mm to, we can say, 2.0 mm. So, right, so if in a particular soil, the size of the particle will be between 0.05 mm and 2.0 mm, so that soil will be known as sand, sandy soil, right? That will be known as sand, right? And the next is a silt, right? In case of silt, we can say the size of the particles there is between, we can say, between 0.002 mm, right, to 0.05 mm, okay, 0.05 mm. And clay, right, so it is uh, called clay when the size of the particles is less than 0.002 mm, right? Size of the particles is less than 0.002 mm. Okay, so this is important thing for you, right? So please bear this in mind. Okay, so let me take it here, right? So these are the various, we can say, points here, right? So one limit is this, right? And the other limit is, we can say, this, and the other limit is above this. Okay, other limit is, let us suppose this, right? So these are the three limits, let me tell you, right? So one limit is on the lower side, that is 0.002 mm. Okay, 2 mm, right? And the second is between 0.002 to 0.5 mm. Okay, and the third is, that is there, we can say, up to the that is the 2.0 mm, 2.0 mm, we can say 2.0 mm, right? So now it's very much clear that if the size is between this range, right, so then it would be called sand, right? And if the size of particles is between this range, then it would be called silt, right? And if the size of particles is between this range, right, then it is called clay. Then it is called clay. Okay. So I hope this is clear to you, right? So many of the students remain confused about this, that what is the difference between this clay, silt, and sand, etc. Right? So I have told you it is on the basis of this only, right? So now what is this? Now we can say the relative proportion of, right? The relative proportion of sand, silt, and clay in soil, sand, silt, and clay in soil, right? Determines the soil texture, right? Determines the soil texture, right? So please bear this in mind. When we talk about the soil texture, then we are talking about the relative mix of sand, silt, and clay in a soil, right? So that determines the texture of the soil, we can say. Okay, so this is the one point, which is the mineral particles, right? So mineral particle of soil can be of three types: sand, silt, and clay, right? So sand is when the size is 2.0 and 0.5 0.05 mm, sorry, 0.05 mm, right? And then the next is it is, we can say, it is silt when the size is between 0.05 and 0.002, and it is clay when the size is less than 0.002. So this is the difference between these three, right? So now the next important point, which we will discuss here, that is the, we can say, the organic matter. Okay, that is the organic matter. This is the next component of the soil, right? Next is the organic matter, right? So now what is the organic matter? Okay, so we will discuss this. What is the organic matter, right? So as far as the organic matter is concerned, what is that? This is the decomposed organic material which was once alive, right? So what is that organic matter, right? So we can right, to make it more you can say fair, right? So we can take it two ways, right? One is the living organic matter, and second is the dead organic matter, right? Living organic matter and dead organic matter. We can take it like this also, right? So living organic matter exists, right, consists of the various microorganisms in the soil, right? And what is the dead organic matter, right? So dead organic matter means the dead organic matter. What is that? That is the decomposed material of of the plants and animals which were once alive on this planet, right? So that is the dead organic matter, we can say, right? So living and dead organic matter. Okay, dead organic matter, it is there. So now this point is clear to you. So this can be there, right? So now the organic matter consists of then living biomass, or right, living beings, living microorganisms, etc. And the second is, right, so now let me write it here that we can categorize the organic matter into, one is the living biomass like various microorganisms, etc., right? So one is the living biomass, one is that, right? And the second point, we can say that about the organic matter, what is there, that can be the detritus, detritus, right? Detritus, this is there, right? And the third component of the organic matter, that is, we can say the humus, right? That is the humus. So one is this, right? Humus. Okay, humus. So there can be the three types of organic matter: living biomass, detritus, as well as the humus, right? So I think it's clear to you, right? So now what is there? As far as the uh, so it you can say it provides us the sense that right, organic matter, in, we can say, organic matter, yes, I am telling you, right? So it make, right, it provides the sense that in organic matter there are the living and non-living matter, right? Living and non-living dead matter, right? So this is there, right? So as far as the non-living dead matter is concerned, there can be two types of the non-living dead matter, right? So one is that matter, right, which is yet to decompose, right? Yet to decompose, right? जैसे किसी ऑर्गेनिज्म की डेथ हो चुकी है बट अभी उसकी डिकम्पोजिशन नहीं हुई, राइट? राइट, किसी प्लांट के जो लीव्स हैं वो गिर चुके हैं, राइट, टूट टूट के गिर चुके हैं, लेकिन अभी उनकी डिकम्पोजिशन नहीं हुई, राइट? क्लियर ना पॉइंट, right? And the second thing is that is, we can say, right, decomposed matter, right? So जो dead है, जो dead matter है, right, वो dead matter की decomposition हो चुकी है, right? So one is the decomposed dead matter, okay, decomposed dead matter. So ये दो situations हो सकती हैं. Clear? Is it clear to everybody, including Amrit and all? Okay. Okay, right. Okay. So now, beta, the point here is that, okay, it's clear. Okay. So now, beta, the point here is that the non-living dead matter, right, which has not yet been decomposed, right, which is yet to decompose, that is known as the detritus. Okay, so detritus, right? So detritus का डिक्शनरी मीनिंग होता है वेस्ट, right? So beta, what is this? It means right, so living matter which has become dead and which is yet to be decomposed, right, which has not yet been decomposed, that is known as detritus, plus the fecal matter of the living organisms, that is known as the detritus. Right? क्योंकि जो fecal matter है animals का, right? So that also take time for the decomposition, right? Okay? So जब तक वो decompose नहीं होता तब तक वो क्या है, वो detritus का part है, and the moment वो सब decompose हो जाता है तो वो humus बन जाता है. Okay, clear? So now we can say, right? So this is the, we can say, I'm taking it like this, right? So this is the, okay, so this is the life here, okay, on the planet. This is the life here on the planet, right? And let's suppose, right? So this is something, right? So which doesn't exist now, right? But that was once existing, right? But it is not existing now. Okay, once existing, but it is not existing now. Okay, is it clear? Right? So now what is there? Both these are known as the organic matter. Clear na? Both these are known as the organic matter. So let me write it here. Okay, both these are known as the organic matter. Okay, I think it's clear to you, right? And now what is there? The organic matter or the life which was there once on this planet, which has died now, which is no more now, right? So there can be two categories of that life, right? So one category of that life is that which is decomposed, right? The waste of the dead or the living beings, right? So which is the decomposed, right? Which is decomposed. And the second is that which is not decomposed, right? Which is yet to decompose, yet to decompose. Right? So now what is there? Something that has been decomposed, right? So this is called the humus. Okay. So something that has been decomposed. So this is called the humus. Humus. Right? And something which has not yet decomposed, right? So that is called the detritus. So easy to remember it, right? So that is called the detritus. So I hope this is clear to you. Okay, everybody knows about this, right? So it includes the dead organisms as well as the fecal matter also, right? As well as the fecal matter also. Okay, so that is there. Okay, so now the next thing is that, right? So as well as the humus is concerned, now there are further categories of the humus, right? So as far as the humus is concerned, humus, right? So let me take it like this. So as far as the humus is concerned, there are the two subcategories of the humus, right? So one subcategory of the humus, that is called the humic substances, right? Humic substance. And the second is the non-humic substance. Okay, non-humic substance is the second category. Humic substance and non-humic substance, these are the two categories of the humus, right? So as far as the humic substance is concerned, this is the, let's suppose, right? Let's suppose this is the process of decomposition, right? Let's suppose this is the process of decomposition, right? And this is the final stage of decomposition, right? Okay, so at this final stage of decomposition, what happens, right? So there will be the stable end product of the decomposition, which will be visible here. Okay, and what is there from this point to this point, right? So we will always say that the matter is yet partially decomposed, right? The matter is yet partially decomposed. That is there, right? So it means before reaching the final stage of a matter which is in the process of decomposition, right? One is that, and second is the end stage of the decomposition, right? So the end stage of the decomposition, that is known as the humic substance, right? Fully decomposed substance or fully decomposed organic matter, right, which is the humus, that is called the humic substance, right? It means a humic substance is stable. Okay, it means the humic substance is stable and it is the end product of the decomposition, right? So it becomes stable, no more chemical changes, stable, right? And it is the end product of decomposition. Okay, it is the end product of decomposition. So this is the main point. I hope the point is clear to everybody. Okay, so this is the main point. Okay, so decomposition of plants, animals, and the waste material, right? So now, what is their non-humic substance, right? Which is yet in the stage of the decomposition, which is partially decomposed material, matter, right? And the non-humic substances consist of, right? Non-humic substances consist of, इसमें क्या होता है? One is the carbohydrates. Non-humic substances consist of carbohydrates, right? Because the breakage is taking place, yet fully breakage has not taken place, right? So that is there, right? So carbohydrates are sugars, starches, fibers, that is there, right? And it may have proteins, right? And it consists of the, we can say, lignins, right? Lignins. Okay, lignins. So what is lignin? Lignin is a natural polymer. Lignin is a natural polymer, 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 right? Existing in terrestrial plants. Terrestrial plants means plants on the earth. Okay? And and it exists in some aquatic organisms also. Okay, so lignin mainly it exists in the terrestrial plants. Lignin क्या होता है? It's a polymer, right? Existing mainly in terrestrial plants. This is the second thing, right? And third point is that exist in some aquatic organisms also, right? Aquatic organisms also. So this is about the lignins, right? Lignins. Okay. So now the, what is the polymer? Polymer is a large, polymer is a substance of right material consisting of very large molecules, right? So polymer means a substance of material consisting of very large molecules. Okay, a substance or material consisting of very large molecules, right? Consisting of very large molecules. So it consists of this also, right? And next to this, we can say that it may consist of the lipids also, lipids, the fats, etc. Lipids also, right? And there can be the organic acids as well, right? There can be organic acids as well. Okay. So it means non-humic substances may consist of all these carbohydrates, proteins, lignins, lipid, organic acids, etc. Okay, so now this is there, right? So now what is there? The next thing, is it clear to you that humus, what is humus first? Then humus, uh, right, consists of two substances, humic substances and the non-humic substances. Humic substance is the end product of the decomposition, right? So that is why it is stable, right? And as far as the non-humic substance is concerned, it consists of partially decomposed material, right? So which is carbohydrates, proteins, lignins, lipids, organic acids, etc. That will be there. Okay. So now we will move further, right? So now what is there? So the humus consists of 80 to 90% of organic matter. Humus consists of 80% to 90% organic matter. Okay, there will be 80 to 90% organic matter in humus. Okay, organic matter in humus. Okay, so now the next thing is that the humic substances, because we have discussed there that humus consists of the humic and non-humic substances. What are the non-humic substances? Those we had discussed there, and now the humic substances shall consist of, right? Humic substances, right, consist of what? Humic substances consist of the oxygen, okay, consist of the oxygen. They consist of the carbon, right? They consist of the right? They consist of the carbon, right? They consist of the hydrogen. They consist of the hydrogen, okay? And they consist of the nitrogen and sulfur, right? They may consist of nitrogen and they may consist of sulfur. Okay, nitrogen and they may consist of the sulfur as well. May consist of the sulfur as well. So this is about the humic substances which we have discussed here. All right. So now there are three fractions of the humic substances. Right. So the various humic substances can be categorized into three groups. We can say that there are three fractions of humic substances. Okay, three fractions of humic substances. So what are those three fractions of humic substances are concerned, right? So 1, 2, and 3, right? The three fractions of the humic substance, right? So one is the humin, second is the humic acid, and the third is the fulvic acid. FULVIC, fulvic acid, right? So these are the three fractions of this, we can say, humic substances. Okay, humic substances. Okay, so now what is this? So let me tell you, because all the substances, right, are may not be soluble, right? All the substances may not be soluble in water at all pH values. You know, you agree with this? I think you, many of you are science students. You may be agreeing with this, right? All the substances, right, may not be soluble in water at all pH values, right? So that is why we can categorize the substances into three. We can categorize the substances into three, right? So one category of substances, we can say that, right? One category of substances, let me take it here, right? So the substances which are insoluble in water at any pH value, right? Substances which are insoluble in water at any pH value, right? At any pH value. So one point is that, right? And the second category, right? Let me take here that these are the substances. These are the substances which are, we can say, insoluble in water at the lower pH, but become soluble at the higher pH, right? Insoluble at a lower pH, okay? Lower pH, but become soluble at higher pH, okay? So Geeta, is it clear to you? At the higher pH, right? And the third class, which we can take it here, right? So the third class is that that is the substances which are readily soluble in water at all pH values. Okay, the substances that are readily soluble in water at all pH values. So there can be these three categories of the substances, right? Readily soluble in water at all pH values, right? Readily soluble in water at all pH values. So this is the point. So is it clear up to this point? है ना? कुछ ऐसा तो नहीं कि किसी को ऐसा लगे कि नहीं ये तो बात नहीं बनी या इसकी समझ नहीं आई, कुछ ऐसा तो नहीं है? Okay, so this is the point here. Okay, so now the next thing, right? Okay, so now the thing, the substances, right, which are insoluble in water at any pH value, that is known as the humin. What is this? This is humin, right? Humin. This is humin, insoluble in water at any pH value, right? And the substances which are soluble in water at a higher pH value, insoluble at lower pH value, that is the humic acid, right? So that is the humic acid. Okay, humic acid. And the substances that are readily soluble in water at any pH value, that is the fulvic acid, right? Fulvic acid. Okay, so please bear this in mind that there are the three fractions, right? There are three fractions of the humic substances. One is the humin, second is the humic acid, third is the fulvic acid, right? Humin is insoluble in water at any pH value. Humic acid is insoluble when, right, is insoluble, we can say, under the acidic conditions, but it becomes soluble under the alkaline conditions, right? Alkaline conditions. And fulvic acid, right, is always soluble in water at all pH values, right? Always soluble in water at all pH values. So the point is clear to you, at all pH values, right? So now the next point, which we'll discuss now, that is the soil air, right? Soil air. So now this is that air. Now, where is the air, right? What is the soil air? First of all, soil air is the mixture of gases which is present in air, right? What is this mixture of gases which is present in air? Sorry, in soil, right? Mixture of gases present in soil pores. Pores, okay. So that is called the soil air, right? Soil air. So which pores? The pores which are not filled with water, because in the pores which are filled with water, it would not be possible for the air to stay there, right? Not filled with water. Okay. So now what is this? It is important for the various organisms which are living in the soil. For their respiration, this is important, right? Okay. That is there, right? So now the oxygen and carbon dioxide are the two important components of soil air, right? The two important components of soil air are oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay. Two important components are of soil air are, right? One is the oxygen, and second is, we can say, that is the carbon dioxide. Oxygen and carbon dioxide. These are the two important components of soil air, right? Soil air, right? And their concentration, means the concentration of the oxygen and carbon dioxide in soil air affects a number of processes which are taking place in the soil, and one of those processes is the nitrification and denitrification, right? So what is this? Means the presence of right, the presence of right, O2 and CO2 in soil, right? In soil, we can say, okay, in soil affects many processes which take place in soil, and one of those processes is actually, these are the two processes basically which I am talking about here: nitrification and denitrification, right? Nitrification and denitrification. Okay, so you know, right? So nitrogen which is there in the air, that is available in the form of ammonia, right? Nitrogen in air is available in the form of that is called the ammonia. Ammonia is NH3, right? Ammonia. And right, and it is not yes, and it is not possible for the plants to absorb the ammonia, right? To take the ammonia directly. So that is why the transformation of ammonia into nitrite and nitrate, right? Uh, you can say take place before the nitrogen is absorbed by the plants, right? So now the point is that the nitrogen in our atmosphere is found in the form of ammonia gas, right? In the form of ammonia. But it is not possible for the plants to absorb ammonia or to take ammonia, right? So that is why the ammonia is transformed into nitrite and then nitrates, right? So that it may become available for the plants to consume, right? For the plants, for the purpose of consumption, we can say, right? So that means what is there? That means we can say the process of conversion of ammonia into nitrite and nitrates, that is called the nitrification, right? That is called the nitrification, right? So we will discuss it in detail further when we will come on the nitrogen cycle, right? So it is known as the nitrification. So in brief, so far, what is the nitrification? Nitrification is the process of conversion of ammonia into nitrite and nitrate, right? Okay, so plant consume the nitrogen in the form of nitrates. So is it clear up to this point now? So next, right, next we will come on the soil water, right? Next thing which we are going to discuss here, that is we can say the soil water. That is the soil water, right? So as far as the soil water is concerned, right, the next point is the soil water. Okay. So now as far as the soil water is concerned, right, so soil water contributes up to 30% of the soil moisture. It contributes up to 30% of the soil moisture. Contributes up to 30% of the soil moisture. Okay. Up to 30% of the soil moisture, sorry, soil volume. Moisture is due to the water only. No? Soil volume, 30% of the soil volume, and is essential for the activity and physiological functioning of organisms in soil, right? So water is essential for okay. So the water is, we can say, essential for the activity and physiological, right? Activity and physiological functioning, right? Functioning of organisms in soil, right? Just assume that let's suppose there is no water in soil, right? So if there is no water in soil, then it would be difficult for organisms to survive there in the soil, right? To maintain their physiological functioning in the soil, because the physiological functioning of every organism requires water, right? So if there is no water in the soil, then the physiological functioning would not take place. And if the physiological functioning would stop, it will not take place, then the organisms would die and it would not be possible for the organisms to survive in that case. It's clear? So this is the importance of the soil water, we can say, right? So now the type of soil determines the water content in the soil, right? Because the water content in the soil is not same everywhere, right? The water content in the soil is not same everywhere, is not same everywhere, right? So it depends on the type of soil, right? There are some types of soil which may keep more water. There are other types of soils which cannot keep water, right? Keep water. Okay, so the water holding capacity of a soil depends on the following factors. You can note it down. The water holding capacity of a soil depends on the following factors, right? Following factors like soil texture. It depends on soil texture, one, right? Because the mixture of sand, relative proportion of sand, silt, and clay, right? So if in a particular type of soil, the relative proportion of clay is very high, then the water absorbing capacity of that soil, water retention capacity of that soil would be very high, right? And if in a particular type of soil, the percentage of sand is very high, right? So then in that soil, the water retention capacity will be very low, right? And that soil will remain dry, and the water content in that soil will be very, very low, right? So that means one is the texture, which determines the water retention capacity or water holding capacity of a soil. Second is the structure of the soil, right? And the third point is the organic matter content, organic matter content, right, in the soil. And the fourth point is that is the arrangement of soil pores. Soil pores कैसे हैं, उनका उनका further arrangement कैसा है, right? So these are the various points which determine the water retention capacity of a soil, right, Peter? So simple, this question can be asked to you in the examination, that which of the following, right, affect the or affects the or determines the water retention, water holding capacity of soil, right? So these four options can be given: soil texture, structure of the soil, arrangement of the soil pores, and organic matter content in the soil, right? And then there can be one only, one and three, right? One, two, and four, one, two, three, and four. So this can be given there, right? So direct question can be asked related with this, right? Okay, so now that is there, right? So I have already told you that a clay soil or soil with the high humus content would be able to retain more water, whereas the sandy soil, right, or the soil with less humus content would be able to hold less amount of water. That is there, right? Okay, so now what is there? Whatever the water is there in the soil, right? Slowly, that water is lost into the atmosphere, right? So soil में से water कहाँ जाता है? Soil में से water atmosphere में चला जाता है, right? The water in soil, right, gets lost into the atmosphere, right? Into the atmosphere. How? By the plants or by the evaporation, right? Plant roots take the water from the soil, right? And the water is transported, we can say, to the upper parts of the plant, right? From where the water, uh, you can say, gets lost into the atmosphere. That process is called the evapotranspiration process also. And the second is evaporation process, right? So direct, जैसे water है, right? So water is converted into the that right, when it is heated, right, so it converted into the steam and it is released into the atmosphere, right. So that can also be there, right. So next is that if the supply of water to the soil is less and the loss of water from soil into the atmosphere is more, right, so then what would happen? It would make the soil dry, right. It would make the soil dry. This point is very much clear, right. It would make the soil dry, right. So next is that when the soil becomes dry, right, when the loss of water is more than the water which is supplied to the soil, right, then what happens? Then the plant roots find it difficult to take the water from the soil, right, to give the plants or to supply to the plant. Okay. So when the water supply to the plants comes down, right, then what happens? Then what happens? Plants wilt, right, wilt, right. Wilting means मुरझा जाना. सो जो प्लांट्स होते हैं फिर वो मुरझा जाते हैं, WILT, विल्ट, राइट. सो पूरा मैकेनिज्म वही है, क्योंकि ये देखो, ये हमारी सॉइल है, राइट, और सॉइल में वाटर है, राइट, और ये कोई प्लांट है जो इसके ऊपर ग्रो ग्रो कर रहा है, राइट, इसके ऊपर डिपेंड कर रहा है, ये कोई प्लांट है, क्लियर ना, राइट. एंड द रूट्स ऑफ दिस प्लांट, right, so the roots of this plant will be taking water, okay, will be taking water from the soil, right, soil, right. So okay, so these will keep on taking water from the soil. Now what will be there, right, if the supply of water to the soil, right, supply of water to the soil is more than the loss of water caused by the evapotranspiration or the evaporation, right. So then there is nothing to worry, है ना, because soil water content in soil would not come down. And if the supply of water to the soil is, we can say, less than, right, if the supply is less than, we can say, right, the loss which is caused by the evaporation or the evapotranspiration, then what will happen? The water level in soil would come down, right? And if the water level in soil would come down, then what next would happen? It would become difficult for the roots to absorb water from the soil, right, to supply it to the plant, right? And if it becomes difficult for the roots to take water from the soil to supply to the plant upward, so then what happens? Then the plant tilts, right? So this condition leads to what? To the wilting of plant. Sorry, wilting of a plant. Okay. So plant का मुरझा जाना, right? Wilting of plant. Okay. So now what is there? Right now what is there? There will be one stage, right, at which the wilting of plant, right, will reach at that level, right, from where it would become difficult for the plant to recover. Okay. विल्टिंग हो रही है, राइट. सो एक ऐसा लेवल वाटर का आएगा जहां इतनी विल्टिंग हो जाएगी कि प्लांट को फिर से रिकवर करना डिफिकल्ट हो जाएगा, राइट. सो दैट परसेंटेज ऑफ वाटर इन द सॉइल, राइट, which leads to right, such an extent of wilting of the plant so that it becomes difficult, it becomes impossible for the plant to recover from there, right. So that level of water in the soil, that percentage of water in the soil, that is known as the permanent wilting percentage, right. So that is known as the permanent wilting percentage. Okay, permanent wilting percentage. So please bear this in mind, permanent wilting percentage, right. Okay, permanent wilting percentage, right? So now what is there, beta? Let me teach you, let me tell you that this is the, let's suppose, maximum capacity of the soil to hold water, right? Means this is the maximum level up to which the soil can hold water. Beyond this, the soil would not be able to hold water, right? So let me write it here. Maximum, right, water holding capacity of the air. Okay, water holding capacity of soil, sorry, capacity of soil, beyond which the soil would not be able to hold the water. Is it clear? Right? And there is another level of water in the soil, right? That is the, this level, let's suppose, right? So this level of water in the soil is known as, we can say, that is the permanent wilting percentage. Permanent wilting percentage. Okay. So now the what amount of water is yes. So what amount of water is available to the plants? What amount of soil water is available to the plants is between these two limits, right? So this is the water which is available to the plants within this limit. Okay, available to the plants. So please bear this in mind, right? So let's suppose soil की 10 लीटर मैक्सिमम वाटर होल्ड करने की कैपेसिटी है, ओके, और 3 लीटर पर जाकर के परमानेंट विल्टिंग परसेंटेज पॉइंट आ जाता है. So it means below 3 liters, whatever the water is there in the soil, that would not be available to the plants. It's very much clear, right? So plants can consume water from this 3 liter up to 10 liters, which is the maximum capacity, right? So this is the water which is available to the plants. Okay. So the water available to the plants is between, okay, yes, is between the permanent wilting percentage and the maximum water holding capacity of the soil that is there. Okay. So now let me tell you in the next few minutes that types of soil water. What are the various types of soil water? Okay, so this point is again important. Various types of soil water. So as far as the various types of soil water is concerned, so we will take into different, you can say, categories, right? So that is the 4 types of soil water we can see, which we will discuss here. So one type of soil water that is known as the hygroscopic water. Please bear this in mind. Hygroscopic water. Okay. So hygroscopic water is that water which is present in the form of a thin film of water around the soil particles. Right? So hygroscopic water is that water which is present in soil, right, in the form of thin film, in the form of thin film around the soil particles. Are you getting me? Right? So what is this? Right? So water in soil, right, in the form of thin film, okay, in the form of thin film, right, that is there, right, and thin film, and it remains firmly attached, and it remains firmly attached to the soil particles, remains firmly attached to the soil particles, to the soil particles. So that is the hygroscopic water. I think it's clear to you. So the next type of soil water which is there, that is the capillary water, right? Capillary water. Okay. So now what is this? So capillary water is that water, right, which is lying there in the narrow capillaries formed by the soil particles, right, which is there in the narrow capillaries formed by soil particles, right? So presence of water that is found in the narrow capillaries, okay, narrow capillaries formed by the soil particles, okay, the soil particles. So this is that, okay. So now the next thing is that is the third point, third type of water, that is the gravitational water, right? So gravitational water is that type of water, right, which percolates deep into the soil due to the gravitational force, right? So this water percolates deep into the soil due to the gravitational force, okay? Percolates deep into the soil due to the gravitational force, okay? Due to the gravitational force. So that is the gravitational water, right? And next is we can say the chemically bound water. Chemically bound water, right? So there may be some chemical compounds, right, in the soil, chemically bound water, right? Chemically bound water, right? So this water is found, we can say, right, or presented in the hydrated oxides of iron, silicon, aluminum, etc. Right? So the water present water presented in the hydrated, right, water presented in the hydrated, we can say, oxides of iron, silicon, aluminum, etc. Right, aluminum, etc. So that is the chemically bound water, okay, chemically bound water, okay, understand? So here it is one thing which is very much important here. Please bear this in mind that hygroscopic water is not available to plants, okay. Gravitational water is not available to plants. Chemically bound water is not available to plants. So the water which is available to plants is the capillary water only. Okay, so please bear this in mind again that the entire amount of water which is there in soil, or the entire amount of soil water, is not available for the plants, is not available to plants for consumption, right? Okay, so there is the hygroscopic water, right? Water attached firmly with the soil particles, right? It makes a thin film around the soil particles, right? So that water is a, you can say, right, firmly attached to the soil particles, so that is not available, right? And gravitational water, this is beyond the reach of the roots of the plants, right? Because this has been percolated very deep into the earth due to the gravitational force of the earth, so that is not available to the plants, right? Chemically bound water, that is not readily available to the plant, okay. So whatever the water which is available to the plants, that is the capillary water only, okay. Clear? Is it clear? So other three types of soil water would not be available to the plants. Okay, other three types of soil water would not be available to the plants. Okay, so this is about the soil water. soil air, what the soil composed of. We have discussed all these things. Okay, right? So tomorrow we will move ahead. All right. So any doubt up to this point, you can ask, please. If anybody wants to ask anything from me, you can ask. Okay, you can ask. Any doubts? No doubt. So then I am taking leave now.
Sir,
Okay,
please show the previous slide, sir.
I'm showing this one. Nishant, this one.
Yes, sir, and the last one also, sir.
Okay, this is there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Is it done?
Yes, sir. I take a snap.
Okay. So can I take leave now?
Yes, sir. Sure.
Okay, take care. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day. Ahead.
Okay, okay, beta. Welcome, welcome to everybody.